What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, and it's that time of year once again to take a look at what's coming this fall in terms of new iPhones. So the big news this year is the iPhone 8, and we now have a reliable idea of what the phone is going to look like. So case manufacturers have been making these mock-ups to explore their accessories with the new device, and this is based on fairly reliable information. Now the big news obviously with the iPhone 8 is that it has this edge-to-edge screen design with a notch toward the top for the sensors and the cameras. Obviously, this is a substantial change to the iPhone design, the biggest in its history. And that comes with the elimination of the home button, which it's had since the original iPhone in 2007. But that has been relocated to the touchscreen just like you might see on an Android phone. Now, it's really not too difficult to imagine how this will work just because the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus eliminated the physical button a while ago. Now it's just a taptic feedback. So it kind of replicates the press of a button, but doesn't actually press. So you can imagine that same technology being applied to the screen. So the next question is, what happens to Touch ID without the home button? It looks like it's going to be eliminated and replaced with something called Face ID. That's why we have two cameras on the front of the phone. This is used with ARKit to map a face. So it's able to 3D map a face, which should make it much more secure and reliable. But obviously, we're going to have to wait until we see the final release to get an idea of just how well or not well this works in practice. Now, there is a technology that allows fingerprint sensors to work through an Oled screen, but it doesn't look like the iPhone 8 is getting this technology yet, but hopefully we'll get a surprise with the final release. Now, there are some older rumors that suggested that the Touch ID sensor would be on the back of the phone, but that appears not to be the case. Now, for me, one of the most exciting aspects of this design is the Oled screen. This would be the first Oled screen on an iPhone. So that gives them a lot more design freedom and allows them to push the screen to the edges and to wrap it around the sensors at the top of the phone. Now, unlike the Galaxy S8, the display does not wrap around the edges, but it's more edge-to-edge with the iPhone than the Galaxy S8 or the LG G6. But the edges of the phone are symmetrically rounded, just like on the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, so it feels great to grip in the hand. Now, this screen is much taller than the 5.5-inch screen on the 7 Plus, but the footprint is considerably smaller, so even though the screen is larger, it's much more compact, just like the Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus. Apple is also returning to an all-glass design with a metal frame. In fact, that metal frame is polished. This looks very similar to the Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus, and the glass back panel allows them to enable wireless charging for the first time on an iPhone. In fact, we're pretty sure that the wireless charging sound effect will sound exactly like this. Now, just like the iPhone 7 Plus, the iPhone 8 also gets a dual camera setup, but you can see the orientation is different now. They've also sort of cleaned things up. The LED flash is now positioned between the two cameras, and we also have a microphone built in here. Now, because this is a glass back panel, we still have a protruding camera, and the module here is no longer integrated into the metal chassis. It's sort of a floating design, very similar to what we've seen with previous iPhones. Another change to the design is the larger power button along the right side. It's quite a bit bigger than the previous generation, but if you look at the volume controls, they're roughly the same size. And just above that is the very familiar mute switch. Toward the bottom edge, not much has changed here. Of course, we still don't have a headphone jack. We have a lightning port at the center flanked on either side by two screws, and then we have matching speaker grills on either side, but presumably only one of them is a speaker grill and the other one is a microphone, while once again we can presume that the earpiece, although smaller visually than the previous generation, should still act as a stereo speaker. Now, the other thing that jumps out right away is not only is it shorter, but it's also narrower. That makes a big impact here. The phone feels quite a bit smaller. So you can definitely see that there might be room to increase the size of this phone further. Now, despite the smaller bezels and the larger screen, the overall thinness of the phone is identical to the iPhone 7 Plus, at least if I look at them side by side. I think that should be a pretty good indication that there won't be much change in terms of the thickness of this device. Now, this can be pretty impressive, especially since so much phone has been displaced by the smaller form factor and the larger screen. Now, in terms of the color selection, we can count on black and silver, but the other colors are sort of in question. One of the more recent rumors indicates a copper gold color, which might replace both rose gold and gold, which I think would make some sense to simplify the color selection. But of course, with a glass design, that eliminates the need for the jet black and the matte black colors. Now, it's not clear right now if we're going to get a white bezel. The rumor suggests that we will not get white bezels on any colors, but I'm not really convinced of that just because some of the leaked artwork hidden within the HomePod firmware does highlight the bezel design, and I think if Apple really wanted to hide the bezel, they wouldn't highlight it with some of the artwork. And personally, I actually really like the white bezel on this phone just because it really highlights the fact that this phone is all display. Otherwise, any phone looks like it's all display when the display is off. So this phone always has a unique look to it, and it also helps you to identify the top and bottom side of this phone, because without a home button, it's actually hard to tell if the phone is all black. Alrighty guys, what I want to know from you is, what do you think of the iPhone 8 design? Personally, I'm pretty excited. I think this is going to be a really good looking phone with some impressive features. But of course, this is still just a mock-up, and final details will change before we see the final release, but this should give us a good idea of what it will look like. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up to let me know, and I'll see you again in my next video.